Professor, you're also the author of ISIS, A History. When you look at what a travel ban could do, does it actually push more people into extreme thinking because they feel left out, or can we not do that correlation?
Any expert on the Middle East, any expert on ISIS would tell you the worst thing you can do is to basically provide ISIS and Al-Qaeda with ideological ammunition, with motivation and inspiration. The ban against 7 countries and Syrian and Iraqi refugees, basically it's ineffective. That is, it will do more damage than good. It will hardly basically limit the damage, any kind of attacks against the United States. It's counterproductive because it plays into the narrative of Al-Qaeda and ISIS. It's foolishly irrational. It alienates Muslim public opinion. If you want to fight ISIS, you don't lump more than 1 billion Muslims with Islamic radicalism and Al-Qaeda and ISIS. It deepens anti-American sentiments in the Muslim world. If you tell me, what does the ban do? I would say it provides a massive propaganda boost for ISIS and Al-Qaeda. It plays into their hands. It's sweet music to extremist networks, not just in the Middle East, but in the greater Muslim world.
Will the White House understand this?
I don't think so. What we need to understand is that I don't have to be an expert to tell Donald Trump that this is irrational, that it's counterproductive, that it's foolishly un-American. I think what we need to understand, this particular decision, this particular initiative on the part of Donald Trump, is really Donald Trump is blinded by ideology. This is a political decision. It plays into, well, with his hardcore narrative. But, I mean, if you look at what's happening in the Middle East and the Muslim world, you have anger, you have rage. And more Muslims now are buying into Al-Qaeda and ISIS narrative that this is a war against Islam and Muslims. I mean, this is not a war between Islam and the West. This is a war within Islam. That is the fight within Iraq and Syria. It's a war within Islam. What Donald Trump is trying to do is to shift the narrative. This is a war between Islam and the West.
Professor, I want to ask you a really sensitive question. I say this with great respect for the literature of, say, Albert Harani and the history of the Arab peoples and all the other literature on Islam. Is Donald Trump running what the Middle East and the Islamic world would perceive as a new crusade? Is there a tinge here within the rhetoric and the discourse that President Trump is galloping off to Jerusalem to fight the 4th, the 5th, or the 6th crusade?
You know, Tom, what I fear the most is that now you have 2 parallel narratives happening in the world, in the Islamic world and the Western world. On the one hand, you have a fringe group called ISIS or Al-Qaeda. ISIS and Al-Qaeda says there is a clash of civilization between Islam and the West, that this is a clash of civilization between America, which is basically the leader of the free world. And now you have Donald Trump, who's basically trafficking in a similar clash. And the clash is a clash of civilization. This is not about a tiny fringe in the Muslim world. This is a war between Islam and the West. I mean, think of what Donald Trump has said in the past 2 years. These are not my words. Islam hates us all. That is, he's talking about Americans, all of us. And this is a clash of civilization. So what I fear the most is that Donald Trump is shifting the debate from being what's happening in Iraq and Syria and Afghanistan, this is a war within Islam, into being a struggle, a clash between Islam and the West. And that's why I say that Donald Trump is unwittingly or wittingly playing into the narrative of Al-Qaeda and ISIS.
Professor, what we react to within the United States and frankly in the collegial West is Mr. Trudeau stepped up this weekend in Canada and said our doors are open to refugees. I'm sure he was awakened last night with the killings in Quebec. Is ISIS in any way diminished, or should Mr. Trudeau and all of us expect these isolated incidents like Quebec?
I mean, I think it's not surprising, Tom. I mean, these incidents have become part of our life. Whether you're talking about Istanbul, whether you're talking about the Sinai, whether you're talking about Berlin, whether you're talking about Quebec, or whether you're talking about Florida, or whether you're talking about California. There is a real division now, a real cleavage, and you have fringe elements on both sides who subscribe to this particular clash of civilization that is between Islam and the West. But what we're talking about here, an entirely different... This is the United States of America, Tom. This is not a banana republic. When the President of the United States basically traffics in a clash of civilization narrative. Call it what you are. I mean, in the Muslim world, and I know a bit about the Arab world and the Muslim world, it's seen as a Muslim ban. It alienates Muslim public opinion. When Donald Trump, the President of the United States, traffics in such a narrative, it undermines the idea of America as a moral force, and also provides ammunition not just for Al-Qaeda and ISIS, it provides ammunition to the far-right group in the heart of Europe, where I am, in Britain, in Germany, in France, and other countries.
Right.
And that's why it's very dangerous.
Well, let me ask a question. I'm sure Francine is far more knowledgeable about this than I am. Should President Trump speak to Parliament? Should President Trump be given the privilege of speaking at Westminster Hall, that space that goes back to 1000 AD?
You know, Tom, really, and I appear on Arab television on a daily basis, I say Donald Trump does not speak for the United States of America. Donald Trump does not speak for the 340 million Americans. There's a real struggle in the United States, and it's really wonderful to see the debate, the struggle that's shaping in the United States, and the media, in particular the American media, standing up and defending American values. The worst thing we can do, and I hear now I'm in the heart of the UK, the worst thing we can do is to give a platform for this kind of rhetoric. I'm saddened by the fact that Theresa May has not stood up in the same way that Merkel in Germany and the French president and the Canadian president. This is not a war. This is not a clash between Islam and the West. It's a clash within. There is a real struggle. I am an American. I'm talking as an American. There is a clash within America about the values we subscribe to, the progressive, democratic, humanist values. Donald Trump does not speak for me, does not speak for millions of Americans.